Well, hello, folks, and welcome to another goddamn fun episode of RfRx. I'm so excited for this one. I've wanted to have this one for quite a while, and I'm really, really excited about it. My name is Eric Wells, and I am the online programming director. And with me as my co-host today is Mr. Rob Palmer, and he's an RFR helpline agent and ambassador. Thanks for being here with me this evening, Rob.
Well, no, I could not pass this up since I suggested Stephanie do a talk. So, how could I not
did? Well, folks, at the beginning of every RFRX, we have a poll, and today is no different. And these polls are kind of designed to get you in the mindset, to get you thinking about what we're going to be talking about tonight. And tonight we have two questions. The first is, do you personally know anyone who has become entwined in conspiracy theories? Yes, no, I'm not sure. And the fourth answer is, do I know anyone? It's me. Question number two, has knowing this person affected your relationship with them? Has it become strained? Has it had no effect? Has it resulted in ending the relationship, some other effect, or this isn't really applicable? All right, so that poll will be running during the beginning of our show here, the introduction. And as we start to introduce our guests, we're going to close it on down. But this is RFRX. What the heck are those four letters doing together, Rob? Why don't you tell us about it?
I'm sure I've heard those somewhere before. I think it has to do with something to do with our weekly meetings. Yes, that's what we call our weekly meetings, where we host guests like Stephanie who discuss topics relevant to the folks in our community. It's definitely not meant to be a replacement for the online community or the support groups, and you'll hear about both of those in a bit. These talks and presentations aim to provide good information, advice, or coping skills to our clients and the community. And you can send any pertinent questions, comments, inquiries about anything in general or this specific talk to rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. Also, we record all of these, so you can go to our main page, click RfRx videos, and you'll see the link to the YouTube playlist, which currently has 93 previous recordings, a whole wealth of information on a whole bunch of topics.
Yeah, exactly. And so RfRx, it's really a show that's put on by RFR, or Recovering from Religion. And we're a nonprofit organization. Everybody that you see here is totally here on a voluntary basis because we love doing this. And we have a mission statement here at RFR. And our mission statement is to offer hope, healing, and support to those struggling with issues of doubt and non-belief. And we have so many different programs that are really designed to further our mission of hope, healing, and support. And one of them is, let's talk about healing. Let's talk about healing, Rob. Why don't you take it? Man, I'm really glad I get to edit these things.
Are you really going to edit that out? No, I think you need to leave that in. All right. So our helpline offers 24/7 support, and that's either via an online chat or phone calls, either with actual numbers, or you can make a web call from anywhere in the world. You can even schedule a call so that we can call you back at a convenient time from our main page. And what you'll find is volunteers like me, they're offering empathetic support without judgment or criticism, and we suggest resources, which are also directly available via the newly redesigned resource page. But if you talk to us, we might be able to point you to something specific after we hear what your issues are. And tell us about hope, Eric.
Yes, sir. You did that way better than I did. Hope. This for us, the hope can be provided and pursued by the sharing and listening to of personal stories that people who have gone through some struggles and found their way out of it, or may still be struggling. And these are stories that I may be able to relate to, that you may be able to relate to, and reading them, sharing them, understanding them, hearing them, relating to them would give us perhaps a light at the end of the tunnel, like some hope, like if they can get through it, then maybe I can. Or if they're struggling through the same thing, then I'm not alone. So we pursue this mission of hope through two different ways. Our first way is the amazing blog at medium.com/excommunications. Our blog is called Excommunications, which I love it. And the other one is our podcast. And right now, the podcasts are all of these RfRx episodes, but some of the old, if you go way, way back into the library of our podcast, there are a lot of, there's nearly 100 of other episodes about people coming on and sharing their stories. Now, we also offer support. That's another part of the mission statement. And the way we offer support, one of the programs is through the peer support groups. The support groups, of course, that makes sense, right? These are incredible places where we get to meet face to face instead of calling up on the phone or chatting with someone online individually. This is where we get to meet as a group face to face and kind of share what's been going on with us recently, what has been coming up with our fears, our doubts, and our concerns, and the different situations that we're finding ourselves in as we are doubting or as we're transitioning out of religion, or even if we've left religion a long time ago. Most of these face-to-face meetings are on Zoom. A few of them are starting to go in person, but they're mostly online at the moment. And currently, we have well over 60 groups around the world. And if you want, you can head to the website and find out the nearest one to you. We've got them in Europe, we've got them in Australia, we've got them in Canada, US, and Mexico, and we're looking to open up new ones all over the place as soon as we have a volunteer willing to step up and be the support group leader out there. We have another program that offers support, right, Rob? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the people here are volunteers and we're not trained therapists, but we do have a sister program which consists of trained professional therapists. That's called the STP, or the Secular Therapist Project, Secular Therapy Project. And as of last week, Dr. Ray told me there were 587 therapists in it, and we've supported over 28,000 clients. So this is a week later. I'm sure at least that second number is even bigger. This allows clients to connect with a licensed secular mental health care provider, right? These people are carefully screened for the following criteria. They need to be appropriately licensed in either their state or country. We need to verify that they maintain a secular practice and there is not going to be any use of religion in the counseling, no proselytizing, and that they exclusively use evidence-based treatments, unlike, hey, crystals or Reiki.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And another program that we've set up that might actually fit into the hope category is the online community, the RFR online community. Now, this isn't a community. This is not a community you can just find by yourself by searching Bing or Google.
Bing?
Can't find it.
What's Bing?
I couldn't say Bing with a straight face. Sorry. You can't find it. It's not publicly available. This is a community that have to have an invite for. So, but this is a fantastic, pretty unique community. Like if you are, say, an ex-Jehovah's Witness or an ex-Mormon or an ex-Muslim, I am neither of those. I've never been a part of those religions. And so I may not be able to fully understand what you've been through, what you've experienced, the kind of pomp and circumstance that has affected you over the years of being indoctrinated into this religion. However, there are a lot of people out there who have gone through that. And so we've set up this community to have different channels, different chat rooms, if you're old like me, and to connect folks who have had those similar experiences with one another. If you're a member of the LGBTQ community, if you are a current or former military, if you're finding you're a secular parent all of a sudden, then this may be a place for you to talk to folks who understand what you're going through. And it's just a fantastic place to be able to connect with those types of people and get the support that you may need. If that sounds like it's something you're interested in, head on over to our Recovering from Religion main page, and you can chat with the helpline agent, or you can call in with the helpline agent. So they'll ask you a few questions to make sure that you're a right fit, and then they'll send you a link to the Slack channel or the Slack workspace.
And by the way, even if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily like to text chat, one of the other advantages of this is there's an announcements channel. So you'll be on the inside and you'll get all of our announcements for our other Zoom meetings besides this one, which we don't necessarily advertise to the outside world.
Yeah, and you guys, the online community has like hangouts on a regular basis as well, so you can all kind of get together and commiserate, ask questions, and what have you. It's really, really a cool, cool community. In addition to that, if you are out and you're not necessarily like, if you're no longer a believer, if you're like a transitioned out of religion, I have got the community for you. You need to check out the Atheist Community of Discord because they're awesome. We've got so many RFR members who are also a part of the Atheist Community of Discord. And right now, they are incredibly awesome to be streaming this program into their Discord channel. And so if that sounds like something you're looking for, I've dropped a link into the chat and it'll be in the description as well. And you can take a look and see if it's the right fit for you. Rob, we got one last thing you want to tell us about volunteering?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So I do a whole bunch of sort of different volunteer things here. One of which is this, the other one is a helpline. So we always tell people who ask us about what's the benefits of volunteering, that healing can also come from helping other people. So we find meaning and purpose by volunteering with RFR. And RFR is always in need of volunteers. There's all sorts of jobs besides the upfront ones, the working the helplines, finding, vetting, posting really good resources for our clients to use, supporting the online community that Eric just talked about. If you have IT skills, we're always updating our software. And, even what I'm doing right now, we're always looking for people to help out with RfRx.
Without further ado, Rob, would you please do me the honor and introduce our guest for this evening?
Yes, thank you, Eric. So Stephanie Kemmerer has been published in Skeptical Inquirer magazine and AIPT Comics. Her main interests include studying conspiracy theories and true crime, cathartically tormenting her Sims, I need to hear the story about that, and studying the 1990s era of militias and extremists. Her cat Squeaks was sent from the future by David Icke to free humanity from the Reptilians. True story. She currently resides in Sunnyvale, California, but someday hopes to visit her home planet of Niburu. Stephanie, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank
That
you.
has to be the most creative intro we've ever had.
Stephanie, welcome. I'm so glad you're here today. So where do you want to start? Do you kind of want to start with your own story, like how you got to come on this RfRx show with your past experiences?
Sure. Yeah. Where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start with my predilection towards conspiratorial thought, or do you want me to start when I was deep in it?
What's kind of interesting to me, because the thing that happened to me is that when I started to doubt religion and was transitioning out, the mentality that I had seemed to make it really, really easy for me to fall into these conspiracy theories, and I believed them for a long time. Is that kind of similar to what you had? Like, how did you get pulled into these conspiracy theories?
It started out when I was a little kid, like, the Mysteries of the Unknown series and that series of Time Life books and
Yeah. Oh my God, those were so creepy.
And just UFOs and cryptids and ghosts, and that's the fun light side. But if you're into that stuff, well, you might also, segue eventually into weirder stuff. And so it was, I was always interested in the weird and the unknown and the fantastical and the mysterious, just the stuff that there's no answer to, but everyone's searching.
So you said UFOs. I was into that as a kid, and I was actually spooked out when I started reading the abduction stories that could happen to me. Paralyzed in bed, tractor beam through the wall or the window. Did that ever spook you out?
Yeah. I had an experience once falling to sleep at night. I was like maybe 12 or 13, and I saw the communion alien, the cover of Whitley Strieber's book. I saw that image, but in my head, my eyes are closed and the image popped into my head, and my mom had to come in and like sleep in my bed with me to get me to go back to sleep that night. I was terrified. Like, the uncanny valley is a real thing, and that's so terrifying.
So what
Yeah.
kind of conspiracy theories are we talking about? Like, I know the Time Life books, my grandma had those, and some of those aliens really messed with me as a young kid. Like, they were really creepy looking. But as I was kind of older, the things that I got into were way, way different than that.
Yeah, well, you can go with the UFO thing has like two sides to it, with the whole like, oh, these creepy things are happening. There's that side, and then there's the majestic side where Eisenhower supposedly made some kind of big, like, intergalactic treaty with the aliens, saying that they could abduct so many people per year and they'd give us like advanced technology and stuff. It's just, and they referenced it in American Horror Story, the most recent season, and it was just fun to see that tied into the topic.
Stephanie, we've said the word a few times. Can you define conspiracy theory versus conspiracy, say?
Yes, that and I think that's important too. Conspiracy is a nefarious plot between two or more people, whereas a conspiracy, and there's evidence. There's, like 9/11 was a conspiracy. There were more than two people involved in bringing down the towers. But a conspiracy theory is an idea or a positive thought about a conspiracy, and there's no solid evidence to back it up with. So 9/11 was a conspiracy, but the whole controlled demolition aspect of it was a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and that's interesting because the conspiracy was by a different set of people than the conspiratorialists blame the conspiracy theory on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So like the planning, the secretive planning, and it doesn't even have to be like the implementation of, but just the secretive planning is technically a conspiracy. But when it comes to stuff that it has no evidence behind it, and we still think it's a conspiracy, that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, essentially. And it's kind of like, MK Ultra was a real conspiracy, but then
And that is,
project
Stephanie, for people who don't know, that is what?
that was the CIA engaged in a very long, very drawn out, very expensive, and very unethical attempt at achieving mind control through LSD. And we do have to give the CIA thanks for giving us the Grateful Dead. Although Chris, I'm sure, nope, I knew it. I knew Chris was going to shake his head at that one. And it was a failure. MK Ultra ultimately failed, and they discovered they couldn't control people's minds. And so, but then they came out, and some people start saying that it was still ongoing, and it was called Project Monarch, which was a conspiracy theory because there's no evidence that Project Monarch ever existed.
So when MK Ultra was actually going on, was there ever a conspiracy theory in the works saying this is going on and people weren't believing it?
I really don't think so. See, that's another funny thing about it
Yeah,
is
it's a real thing going on, and they didn't even have the like, oh, we know about this. No, because they didn't.
And I tell people, I use COINTELPRO as an example. COINTELPRO was a very real conspiracy that was, and look, say what you want about the FBI, but this was the FBI under Hoover. Okay, so I think we can all agree that the FBI under Hoover was not a good organization. And COINTELPRO was discovered by 7 draft protesters who broke into an FBI field office in Philadelphia. They were looking to steal draft cards, and instead they stumbled upon COINTELPRO. So they did not do a very good job covering that up.
How can you possibly tell the difference between like a real theory or a real conspiracy, something that actually happened, and something that we think has happened that there may not even be evidence yet for? Like Area 51, for example, that most people can't get into that thing, and so all sorts of crazy theories come out of that place. like aliens and UFOs being housed there. How could we sift through the real and the fake?
Well, here's the thing. And you know, I still do indulge in conspiratorial thinking. Conspiracy theorists aren't very imaginative. If anything was happening at Area 51, we wouldn't have never known what Area 51 was. If anything really is going on, that's a decoy. That's a decoy. I mean, that, you know, if it's really that top secret, then Area 51's a decoy. It's probably just a bunch of frat brothers hanging out drinking beer in a big hangar.
Well, there's been a lot of talk in the UFO world, skeptical about that. The government actually helped along, if not started, the whole UFO conspiracy thing,
Oh
because
yeah.
we had planes that were flying higher than normal pilots would expect to see planes, and they were reporting them, and we didn't want them to do that, and we don't want to be, well, maybe there's a secret military plane up there, which it was. It's like, no, it's a UFO.
Yeah, that would be, and you know, that kind of like the South Park episode where the South Park episode about the 9/11 conspiracies, where the end result is that the government created 9/11 conspiracies so that they wouldn't seem incompetent.
Oh my God.
You know, there's always like an extra, like for me, I always think there's an extra level that it's almost like the conspiracy theorists like aren't taking it far enough in their conclusions. Like Illuminati, if they really existed, we would not even know that word.
Of course, that's what they would say.
That's what they want you to think.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I kind of notice is that real conspiracy has a lot more evidence behind it. Like you can actually trace or follow the paper trail back to kind of its origin. My sister-in-law is huge into these conspiracy theories, and she had presented me with something about like the Clintons flying on a plane and some crap like that. And I actually researched this, and I couldn't go past this one guy on Reddit or some channel somewhere who just said, "Hey, I know this happened for a fact." That was it. That was completely it. That was the only evidence that it actually ever existed. And it was just, that wasn't nearly enough.
Yeah, that's how a lot of these, like Bill Cooper, the guy who wrote Behold a Pale Horse, one of his, he presents a document in his book called Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, and he claims that that he had bought a used Xerox copier, and he found this document in the Xerox copier, and some researchers found out that it was just like a trolley paper that someone wrote in like the 80s or something like that. And you know, there's always that little story, I found it on a Xerox machine. Yeah, right, Bill. Yeah, yeah, sure you did, Bill. Sure.
What would kind of what is the kind of the set of thinking or even circumstances perhaps that would pull someone into the what are some of the basic requirements in order to be drawn into that any conspiracy theory group?
I would say one of the biggest things is powerlessness, or whether it's real or imagined, and
Oh,
a
wow.
sense of helplessness. Like for one example would be Black Americans are more likely to be vaccine hesitant in some instances, and that's because of Tuskegee. And you know, we really screwed the pooch on Tuskegee. That was stupid. It was unethical. It was immoral, and it was completely evil. And that has there are still Black Americans, and it's traced directly back to Tuskegee. So you can kind of see this element of, you can trace back where some modern day quote unquote conspiracy theories have an actual, you know, they have an actual solid foundational fact in history. You know, I mean, that's really difficult to have that sense of, okay, I'll get the vaccine, but wait a minute, it's difficult. I
And when
can see that.
you mentioned the Tuskegee, I say it slightly differently than you.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you
yeah.
mentioned that this was where uh, white government agents were kind of testing medical vaccines and medicine and procedures on Black Americans. Is that right?
Yeah, it was for syphilis, and
Oh,
I think the
yeah.
majority of them never even got any antibiotics. They were all just being given, I believe, placebos or something, and it totally destroyed generations of families because they thought they were getting cured and they weren't, and then they were
Mhm.
passing it to their wives, and the wives were passing it to the children, and it's just like I get a little choked up thinking about that horror because I just don't, there's no justification
Yeah.
ever for anything like that.
So there's hopelessness and a feeling of powerlessness. What else do you feel would be kind of like requirement or something that will be able to put a seed in a person to be attracted to to conspiracy theories?
I think also that for a lot of people is, you have the powerlessness and the helplessness, but you also have kind of ingrained in that a sense of isolation. Again, it could be real, it could be imagined. Like, we saw the explosion of QAnon during the COVID lockdowns. And it's the more terrifying reality is, the easier it is to kind of buy an alternative reality, which is usually often more terrifying.
Mhm.
And so there is an element of isolation, I believe, also. And it's also I think curiosity is a humongous thing. Like, everybody everybody likes reading the crazy walls, but are you going to be the one creating a crazy wall? That's then the crazy wall is like the scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Charlie's in the mailroom and he has all the strings and the
The strings
thumbtacks,
and
Oh,
pins and
and
stuff
he's
like that.
asking who is Pepe Sylvia, and so yeah.
You feel like uh, a sense or a feeling of like when I came out of religion, I can clearly see a difference between now and then, where I've done a lot of work in learning how to think critically, whereas before it was more based on my emotions and maybe my intuition and some magical thinking about how there was a spiritual realm out there and such. Do you feel that is at all partly may contribute to people getting wrapped up into conspiracy theories?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's for some people it's they're quote unquote co-conspirators, if you will, are they form a community, or as I like to call it, a community. Um and you find yourself, what there's it's kind of like when you're getting out of religion, when you're getting away from drugs or alcohol, when you're getting away from conspiracy theories, it's not just your thought that's changing, it's your whole life. Because, and even with quitting cigarettes, maybe you can't drive that same road you used to drive because that's the road where you would smoke more cigarettes while you were driving or something. So it's not just your mind that changes or your view of the world, it's everything. Everything drastically changes.
what I've observed from, and I'd like to hear your take on this, what I observed from hearing other people talk about this, and also my perception of hearing people who are into it, and also watching Behind the Curve about flat earth believers, is that part of the draw is now you've joined a great community, all of which know more than the rest of the population, and you're the woke ones, and they're all fools. So you're special.
Yeah, yeah, you do feel, and that ties in with with the feeling of powerlessness. and helplessness. You don't have 3 letters behind your name. Maybe I didn't finish college, and you feel like you could be better, but there are forces holding you back. And but now you have the secret knowledge, so you're actually better than everybody else. And it ties in with that, because it gives you a sense of, oh, maybe I don't have any friends, or I don't have a good job, or all this, but I know more than everybody else.
Well, and now you're in a community of friends, all of which who are in the same bubble or who reinforce your belief. And for one thing, you're being reinforced. And secondly, you don't want to change your mind, because then you'll be out.
Yeah, that luckily for me was not really a big thing, because I didn't really interact with too many other conspiracy theorists, like either in real life or online. But I did discover after I got out, all of a sudden I was more social and outgoing.
Hmm.
So but for a lot of people, there is that fear, like leaving a cult. You lose so much.
Yeah, it is kind of a the being a part of the in group is really attractive to so many people. As us as like really social creatures as well. One of the other things I've noticed, and it's really kind of along the same lines as Christianity or any other religion, was that this community would totally cherry pick. They would accept the things that cherry picking, I don't think is the right thing. Rob will be able to correct me when I'm done. They accept the things that fit into their theories, and then they completely reject and push away the evidence against their theories.
Yeah, confirmation bias.
Confirmation, thank
Yeah.
you.
But you often do that by cherry picking. That is true, either consciously or unconsciously. That's true.
Yeah, and well, one of the biggest examples of that, at least for me, because 9/11 was like my main jam, is World Trade Center 7. How did this building collapse? It wasn't on fire. Well, you know what? They're only showing you the least damaged side. Like after I got out of the 9/11 conspiracy theories, and I watched a documentary debunking that stuff, they're like, this is the picture they show you, in the conspiracy documentaries. And then they're like, this is the side of the building that was completely engulfed in flames. Boom, end of story. I'm like, why don't they ever show you that other side? Why don't they ever show you that other side? They never show you the backside of the building.
Yeah, the same
So
thing with the plane at the Pentagon. I mean, the images that they choose to show are, it's like, "Hey, no plane at the building. We think it was a missile." And then there's clear in the news, this picture, that's a part of a plane there, like part of the engine.
Yeah, the fuselage, you could clearly see
Yeah.
the fuselage there. Well, they planted that afterwards.
Well, of course. Well, that's part of the right. Anything that disproves the conspiracy theory is part of the conspiracy theory.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was looking over some stuff on Sandy Hook, and they kept saying, oh, release the death certificates. And Leonard Posner, the father of Noah Posner, did release Noah's death certificate. And Jim Fetzer, in his conspiracy book about Sandy Hook, just spends like 3 pages. Like, why does the N in Noah on this line look different than the N of Noah on this line? And why is there shading? And, there was a point where one of the Sandy Hook conspiracy people was saying, dig them up and prove that there's someone in the coffin. And you know what? Even if they had done that, it wouldn't be enough. Then they'd come back and they'd say that that's a fake body, or we need a DNA test. And then if they did a DNA test, they'd come back and they'd say, well, that was obviously faked. So there really isn't, and Lenny Posner learned, trying to interact with some of these people, that some of them just can't be reached, because there's always going to be another reason. Like, you want the death certificate, here it is. Oh, well, something seems fishy about this. Like, it is, for some of them, it just doesn't end. It's never enough.
So you mentioned Sandy Hook. So I don't know if you want to get there yet, but I know that's what got you out of this way of thinking, because you were a believer, right? That it was a false flag. You want
Yeah.
to go there yet? Talk about why why you believe that? And what changed you?
Jim Fetzer, I got sucked in through the YouTube rabbit hole, and Jim Fetzer, Jim Fetzer kind of did the same thing that the Zeitgeist movie did, like where he starts talking about like kind of spiritual stuff, and you're like, yeah, I can jive with this, a little new agey, a little spiritual. I can, this, this speaks to me. And then, he starts talking about Boston Marathon, and then he started talking about Sandy Hook. And then I started watching some of the quote unquote documentaries on YouTube about Sandy Hook and Alex Jones, Jim Fetzer. And I was like, oh, okay, no one died. And that represented the absolute lowest of the low. And I made a comment to a friend, and the friend looked me right in the eye and said, I work with the parent who lost their child at Sandy Hook. And I didn't ask for a name. I probably could have researched it and figured it out, but that didn't seem important. And to this day, it's been like 5 or 6 years to this day, I have not asked my friend for the name. And the friend could have been lying. Who knows? But, and even if the friend was lying, what they said to me represented a fact that I wasn't willing to entertain before, is that somewhere out there is a person who has been directly affected by one of these things. I don't know anyone personally who was shot at the Aurora Theater, but somewhere out there is someone who knows someone who was shot or killed there, or who witnessed it. And that made me open up a whole possibility of, I can't deny this stuff anymore, because right here is there someone standing in front of me saying, I know someone. And that alone just kind of made me, ooh, this was a friend. We had been friends for at least 20 years at that point. So we're going on 30 years of friendship now. So it's, you can't, I know there are some people out there who, when confronted with that, would still double down, but this is a friend that I love very, very much. So
Stephanie, what do you think would have happened if you had never known that person, or that conversation never happened?
That's a terrifying thought to me. That is truly, truly, truly terrifying, because I don't know if I would have gotten out. I don't, maybe something else would have happened that would have gotten me out, but that was just the most shocking, hurting, kind of, in a way, I was kind of angry at myself too. So I might have, I don't think I would have ended up in QAnon, but I might have just kept going and believing this stuff stubbornly. I shudder to think. I have a hard time imagining alternate me.
Yeah, it's a scary thought for people, because pretty much everyone who makes some life change, there's some seed event that they can trace it back to that at least started it. And if that didn't happen, where would they be?
Yeah. And that is kind of a scary thought, because you don't, oh gosh, what didn't they do, like a series of like X-Men comics where it was like alternate realities or something? I don't want to read that comic book of my life.
You titled this discussion Exiting the Rabbit Hole, from Red Pilling to Recovery. And to me, it seems like there's two like different stories in there, like Alice in Wonderland and The Matrix. Do you want to kind of talk about why you titled it this? Because I think red pilling would be really helpful to discuss, because it seems to be like an inside term.
And by the way, those go together, because in The Matrix there was reference to Follow the Rabbit and the White Rabbit. So
Yeah.
The Wachowskis put that together. Yeah.
Well, red pilling, I mean, what aside from buying the real red pill from InfoWars, you could that red pilling does refer to the Matrix, and
You can get a red pill from Alex Jones.
yes, they
What?
sell something called the real
I
red
can
pill.
What?
I can get a Dayquil and get a red.
Has anyone
Yeah,
tested
yeah.
what's in the thing?
I think I'm pretty sure I heard on an episode Knowledge Fight they were talking about some tests were done or something, but it's yeah, I wouldn't trust any of his health supplements. And if he is taking the health supplements, you could see how his mental health is deteriorating.
Mhm.
Right there is all the evidence you need. But yeah, so he's playing into that, but it is the reference from the Matrix, and and I hate the word woke. I hate it when it's used by the left, and I hate it when it's used by the right. It's always made me cringe, no matter who's using it. But it is a, you know, a reference to waking up, the Great Awakening, you know, and I don't like red pills, and I certainly do not like black pills, and that's for incels and nihilists. So
Oh, I never heard that
gotta,
term.
you know,
Black pilling?
yeah, yep, yeah, that's even scarier than red pilling.
That's not
That's
from the Matrix. Where'd that come from?
I think they kind of used they kind of took the red pill and they kind of like added a little extra evil to it. That
Oh, jeez.
it's really big in the incel community, and that's a scary world.
So just real quick, what is an incel?
Involuntary celibate, and there's been a high instance of involuntary celibates who have become mass murderers, such as
I see.
Elliot Rodger. He's considered like the hero in the incel community.
I didn't even think about those folks having heroes like him. Oh,
Oh,
jeez.
they do, and they like their bowl haircuts. They like to get bowl haircuts because it emulates the haircut that Dylan Roof had.
Is there
And it's okay. It's okay if you have to laugh at some of this because it is horrible, and it is okay to laugh. You know,
is there an overlap between incel community and QAnon? Other conspiracy theories?
there is a slight overlap in the sense that a lot of it came from like the 4chan culture, and very trolly. Both communities are extremely into trolling and just cyberbullying and just lots of doxing and fail doxing and harassment, and it really there is an overlap in that, and they both really like guns, and they both like toxic masculinity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now we talked kind of about what the red pilling is. When would you consider yourself as having taken that red pill? Like, what was it? What was the thing for you? Because we talked about Sandy Hook as the kind of getting you out of it, but when do you feel like you really got into it?
Well, I kind of played around a little bit here and there. Like I bought some David Icke books. Yes, I actually paid for them at a store. Uh, and it just out of curiosity and stuff. But what really got me, and there's a podcast called The New Conspiracists, and they always ask their guests at the start of every episode, what got you interested in conspiracy theories? And they're gonna name the same movie that I'm gonna tell you. Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist.
Yes, Zeitgeist really, you know, because they did the same thing with like that Bill Maher did in Religious, with like, you know, all these religions really stem from, and you're like, yeah, this is good, and then they slip in some sovereign citizen. And then they also start talking about, you know, the engineers and architects for 9/11 truth and the nanothermite. demolition theories,
Okay, wait,
and
we're talking a lot about a lot of inside baseball here. So the
okay,
nanothermite, is that a 9/11 thing? Like that's how
yeah,
the beams were melting and stuff.
Yeah,
yeah,
Mick West did a whole presentation at
Okay.
SciCon about that.
yes, he's
Debunking.
incredible.
Okay.
I absolutely adore him. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
by the way, yeah,
that
Mick West's site, I don't think we're gonna, is Metabunk. Yeah,
yes,
he went into, he talks about, let's see, what's his big thing? Contrails, and then he got into 9/11, and now he's a great debunker of the latest, oh yes, the US government knows UFOs are real. So anyone wants to see that kind of information, it's Metabunk by Mick West.
yeah, yeah, and his book, Escaping the Rabbit Hole. Yes, and one of,
podcast.
yep,
Tales from the Rabbit Hole. Yeah,
and
he
one of the
actually interviews
people,
conspiratorialists. Yeah.
yeah, and the one guy he talked to, I was like, wow, this is me. Because he talked in one of the chapters in the book, he talks about a man who used to he was so in love with like that rush you got when you discover new information from conspiracy theories, and now he gets that same rush from debunking. I'm like, oh, that's me. Wow,
Cool.
that's so great. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool. Yeah, and I know people in the skeptical world who aren't into conspiracies, but they used to believe in the paranormal something or other, and now they get a rush from debunking those things, or they would say investigating those things and proving specific cases wrong. Yep,
yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah. And yeah, it's just there is like a pipeline from the paranormal to conspiracies. It's a longer pipeline than some of the other ones, but there is a connection.
Oh, yeah, that you nailed it, because that was the middle thing for me. I believed in ghosts and things like that too. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I never made that connection before.
And think about, I mean, come on, it used to be a fun show. I would even listen to it after I got out of conspiracies. But let's be clear about this. We like Art Bell. We don't like George Norrie. Okay. George Knapp is okay, but Coast to Coast AM is it's so great, but it's become more and more politicized with George Norrie at the helm. And Art Bell had a little more pushback with some of the crazy callers, but some people, like, some of the funnest things to do was just listen to when it was like 3 hours of people calling in. And
What is Coast to Coast AM?
oh, it's the craziest talk show. It was originally hosted by Art Bell, but then it was taken over by George Norrie, and it is just UFOs, cryptids, haunted houses, paranormal,
Mm.
conspiracy theories, just all sorts
It would
of.
be the show, the one and only show Fox Mulder would watch or listen to.
Yeah, yes,
Okay, all
And he
would
would
right.
say it's a
definitely.
science show. That's what he would do. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that kind of represents the, oh yes, X-Files. That represents kind of the pipeline between, Coast to Coast AM is kind of like a signifier of the pipeline between the paranormal and the conspiratorial.
So I want to ask you about a quote that you said at someplace. I've read all your stuff recently just to be up on this, and I saw you talk at the New York City Skeptic. So it was from one of those places, I don't remember, but you said something profound. All conspiracy theories are gateway drugs. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's you have you're sampling it. You're sampling a little something, and it opens you, like they always used to say, don't do marijuana because, this guy tried the marijuanas and 5 days later he's on heroin. And there is an element of truth to that with conspiracy theories, except the fact that your heroin is also mixed in with some meth with the conspiracy theories. So it it does get it is very, very dangerous, because if you will entertain one idea, it does kind of make your brain more susceptible to other ideas.
And plus, I guess, like to use the drug metaphor, now you're going to be around pushers all the time, pushers of other drugs.
Yeah, yeah.
Buddies.
When I interviewed Jake Rockatansky from the QAnon Anonymous podcast, and he was later in the HBO series about QAnon, I'd asked him, I'm like, a lot of the ways that it manifests in people seems almost schizophrenic, and I'm like, what would you consider to be like the difference? And you'd said, well, with a schizophrenic, you're surrounded by people who are not. We're trying to help you navigate through this, whereas with a conspiracies, you are surrounded by people who are enforcing that. So basically, conspiracy theorists are essentially schizophrenics who are getting therapy from other schizophrenics, and none of them are on medication.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yes, metaphorically, yes.
Do you know what targeted individuals are?
Yes, and I did have a friend who thought for a short time that they may have been one, but they didn't. It wasn't like the heart stuff or beaming thoughts. They just thought that they could possibly be a gang stalking victim.
Yeah, so for people who don't know about that, there's a significant number of people. The New York Times estimated as 10,000 in the US. I would guess it's 10 times more than that from the limited exposure that I know people, or I know people who know people like this. And they think that their whole life they're under surveillance, and like they're not somebody who's in an important job. They may be a waitress or something where no government official would care what they do, but they think everything in their life is being monitored. They leave their house, they come back, they have to check it for bugs. They have to take their TV apart because it's buzzing. And to connect it with what you had just said, in the olden days, they would just be delusional on their own. And now they connect with other people on Facebook who have groups, and they all support, yeah, this is real. It happens to me too. And now you'll never get them out of this.
I actually saw a TI car in real life at a hotel.
What does that mean?
TI car, you'll see, I forget I think they call it a kook mobile, like, crazy kooky mobile. And it's basically a car covered in signs that discuss the gang stalking they believe that they're under. And it's like the little letter stickers you can get for your mailbox at the hardware store. Like, they spend hundreds of dollars on dozens of those and cover their car with messages. Some of it's written. I saw a car down in Santa Cruz completely covered, like, am being stalked, please take photographic evidence. I wish I would have gotten a picture of the car, but I didn't.
Well, then they would have seen you and thought you were the one following them.
Right.
So probably best you didn't.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah, it is.
What kind of do you happen to know maybe like what happens in the brain for folks who are getting this positive feedback from within the groups?
Dopamine all the way. Dopamine, possibly adrenaline, not adrenochrome, but adrenaline.
You want to tell people what that is? Because people won't know what that is.
Adrenochrome,
adrenochrome, it is a real thing that is produced by the body, and you can actually buy it without a prescription online. Supposedly just gives you a wicked headache. I haven't tried it, but I'm thinking about it. And supposedly children are tortured in order to produce this oxygenated adrenaline, and that's like part of like a vampire type mythos where drinking it will keep you young forever. But excellent researcher Dapper Gander on his Patreon did a great breakdown of it, and basically an average adult human can only produce like 0.05 grams of it at once. So literally if you're going to be doing it to a kid, the amount they would produce would be even lower. So it just there's just no.
So this is part of the QAnon lore that
yeah,
Democrats...
but it does predate it. David Icke was talking about it for decades before QAnon.
So there's some shadowy people who abduct children and take this chemical from their body for their own purposes.
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
and-
but it's a
and-
chemical you can buy online.
So why would you?
Does it come in a red pill or something like that?
Yeah, well, and Merck, we have to have a talk about the color of their COVID pill because it's red.
Oh.
Oh boy.
And no, that's not good.
Now, with this dopamine, do you get? It seems like the more dopamine you get, like there can be a desensitizing to it in some sense, and so you kind of have to produce more and more dopamine in order to get the same sort of reaction or feeling. It almost seems like that may be what's contributing to these conspiracy theories getting crazier and crazier. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I had kind of reached the end of my rope with the 9/11 conspiracies, and that's when I started searching for more. Like I remember like I didn't have the words in my head at the time or the wherewithal or the knowledge, but I was like, I've heard all the 9/11 stuff, and well, what's next? And I was like, Arctic ice walls, nah. Nazis in
You
Antarctica,
couldn't do flat Earth.
nah. And no, and someone tried like they knew I was a truther, and they tried getting me into flat Earth, and I just got on Facebook, and I was like, sorry, dude,
That's too
no
far.
bueno, flat Earth.
So you were
No.
a truther. That's all right. So there are so many theories, mutually contradictory, about what happened. What was your take on it? Were there no planes? Were there holograms? What was it? What happened? What did you think?
CGI. The planes were all CGI.
What?
Did you see CGI back in 2001?
What?
Right?
It was horrible.
Right?
It sucked.
Right? Yeah, I was a no planer.
Oh, I hadn't heard that term. No planer. Oh, there were no planes. Okay.
Yeah. And there was a so-called documentary called September Clues, and the guy who created it also made the astonishing, and this is kind of like I'm not sure if this if September Clues came out before or after Sandy Hook, but you see a lot of crossing over, because the guy who did September Clues claimed that no one died on 9/11, and that these were people all created by AI technology. He called them Vic Sims. And even
Oh,
though I
geez.
was even though I was a 9/11 truther, I did push back against that, because I had worked as the head obituary clerk for a newspaper in Easton, Pennsylvania, and I had gotten some obituaries for people who had died in the World Trade
Mm.
Center. And in order to get that obituary in my hands before it even makes it in the newspaper, there has to be a medical examiner or a doctor who signs off on that. And in the absence of a body, they do a court case to have the person declared legally dead. Then that's signed off by medical examiner, doctor, pathologist. And then that information is sent to a funeral director who has the death certificate and all that information. And then the funeral director sends that obituary information to me. So I was like, I did obituaries for some people that died on 9/11. They did die. They
Wow.
really did die, because there's a process. There is a process. And there were people where I had to refuse their submissions because they didn't have a death certificate, or they didn't have a funeral director to sign off on it.
So you knew that if the name got to you, it was for real.
Yeah. So I did push back against that idea. And I also did push back against they said that it was strange that, all the bodies got immolated, but some passports and papers still survived. When I lived with my dad and we had our house fire,
Sure.
I have a picture of it. Everything on the counter in the kitchen was destroyed, except for the roll of paper towels.
Yeah. Oh, so we mentioned cherry picking before. I mean, that happens big time with
Yeah.
conspiratorialists, right? You find
Yeah.
one thing, oh, look at that. How do you explain that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
we haven't really gone into too much the connection of religion and conspiracies, but like, so I watched the January 6th events in real time on TV, as I was just expecting a normal boring day of just the counting of the votes. And I saw people walking through the Capitol Rotunda carrying Q flags and big flags with crosses on them. So then I learned that there's a big overlap between QAnon, and the religious right. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, it's all they're trying to kind of and Alex Jones says this a lot too. They're trying to take the concept of soldier God and soldier Satan into kind of a real life arena. And I'm not going to denigrate someone for believing in God or the devil. What I am going to denigrate them for is that they believe that there's a war on earth between the two. That, that's a little and that's kind of what is being represented by a lot of the oath keepers, the Alex Jonesian type. And it's very big, where they want to, you saw it in Ruby Ridge too with Randy Weaver, and you saw it in Waco, where the religion directly tied into a paranoid ideation, and it did not end well for anyone.
So with QAnon, do you think it has to do with, I don't say listening to authority, but they're not listening to the government authority. They're listening to other people, I guess, with a religious bent, saying this is all God's will. Like, how did that meld together? Like, it started with Q drops, which were, as far as I know, not religious. They were just having to do
Yeah,
with government policy. So how did that meld it to the point where you get somebody carrying the cross and the Q flag at the same time?
they see themselves as warriors for God. And if you look at a lot of the memes, they have like Donald Trump as some big muscular like Greek god figure, and they even have a picture of his last press secretary, of her as like an avenging angel carrying, like they're and so it just became this slow process of further. I think they kind of started to insert some of the religion in because it made it touched a nerve more. Politics is enough of a nerve pusher, but religion kind of stabs at it a little bit deeper. And I think it's also used. I think a lot of the QAnon people are using religion, whether they know it or not, because that kind of indoctrinates the person further. And it's like, oh, well, if you get out of QAnon, you're not turning your back on Q, you're turning your back on God.
Mm,
And they may not even be aware that that's what they're doing.
got
So
it.
QAnon is mostly a bottoms up thing. I mean, the Q drops are from somebody above, but they're really like, maybe until the thing in Texas, wasn't some specific person, right? Am I wrong? That was driving it. So like, was this just a grassroots thing that melded the Christianity into the movement?
Well, there were several other Anon accounts that appeared shortly before QAnon. And it's I mean, you kind of have to understand the culture of 4chan. And and I would point people to Q Origins on Twitter. Great account, and really, really, really dives into like the tech aspects of it and stuff. But a lot of it, it just happened that Q just, Q Clearance Patriot succeeded where FBI insider Anon or CIA Anon didn't. And they were all kind of pushing the same things. And it was just bad luck, or good luck, I guess, if you want to look at it the other way. It just became something that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people were saying that. And yeah, it's I'm sorry, I just saw something in the chat that, did they overturn Roe v. Wade? Is that a real thing that's happening? That just caught my eye. I hope
Oh.
to God they did not. But yeah, it's just the culture of 4chan, which was very, very trolly, very just the darkest stuff you can imagine.
So am I right in that there has not been a Q drop since last year?
December 8th, 2020
Wow,
was the
that is a
last
long time
one.
ago. So what do you make of that?
Well, in the absence of Q, they're all fighting for, I think it's actually worse that Q stopped posting, because now they have to create their own ideas, and it's all conflicting, and it's really spread to a whole, just the infighting, oh, Flynn called Lynn Wood a liar, and Mike Lindell's mad at it's like a soap opera of, I mean, just imagine a soap opera starring nothing but various versions of Elon Musk. That's essentially what it's turned into.
So the thing that happened, and maybe it's still happening, I lost track, when they were meeting down there on some anniversary of the JFK assassination. That really wasn't the anniversary, waiting for the new, I don't know, return of
Yeah,
JFK Jr. Is that like over? Because that's been months and months and months. Did that go away?
that no, it has, I guess they've splintered off into 3 groups. And I'm hoping to see Ariel pop into the chat, because he's been keeping track of this more than I have lately. But they've splintered off into different groups. A bunch of people have left. Some people have been rescued, and others are still there, and they themselves have formed warring factions. So I guess it's -48, -47, and -46 now, or something. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a little bit back to you. You had mentioned a big part of your coming out of that, or waking up, or coming out of the conspiracy theories, was knowing someone who was directly affected by the Sandy Hook. Did you have any doubts before then, or was that kind of like the very first thing that triggered this?
I know I did have doubts. I remember it, because I didn't really even know what a podcast was at the time, because I'm a derp. And so I was just watching stuff on YouTube. So I would go on YouTube and type in 9/11 conspiracies. And I remember there were a lot of times when I was doing that, when I heard a little voice in my head saying, just type in debunked, just type in debunked.
Oh,
And I just kept, and it would have only taken like an extra second, and I should have done it. But I did hear that voice in, telling me, type in debunked, type it in, just hit debunked, and then watch that video. And I just didn't. I just kept like kind of pushing it away. But I realize now that having that voice, even if I did ignore it, but having that voice and knowing it was there, told me that I was kind of collecting myself, and I might have gotten out. I might have been getting ready.
and I mean, recovery from this. I mean, I'm sure that once you decided to be out of it, everything was just fine, and you didn't have any after effects, and it was all done, right? That's exactly how it happened, I'm sure, right?
Well, no, there was a long process after my friends flew back home. The friend that told me about, about the Sandy Hook thing, I decided to skip over Sandy Hook, and I did finally do that thing in YouTube. I typed in 9/11 conspiracies debunked, and I found a 7-part documentary. I forget the name of it. I wish I remembered. But they broke down all the different issues and the main points. And then part 7 was about the mindset of a conspiracy theorist. And they use the example, they talk about the outward and external locus of control, where you feel like you have no control over your life and stuff, that everything else is controlling you. And they use the example of you wake up tired, you hit the snooze button, you're running late for work, but it's the jerk who's driving slow in front of you. It's their fault. It's not your fault for hitting snooze. And that really like hit me hard and painfully. And I said out loud, I was in an empty house at the time, and I said out loud, and I kind of looked around. I was like, that's me. I'm not going to be like that anymore. And, it took several years to kind of get myself to the point where I feel comfortable or safe, anymore. But that struck me to have that realization of, wow, I'm the one who would drive like an idiot and scream at slow drivers because they were driving too slow, but it was my fault because I was putzing around the house and I ended up leaving for work late. That's not cool. That is not a cool way to live. And yeah, that it was kind of a painful thing to actually have that realization of, essentially, I'm a shitty person.
That again sounds such a mirror to so many other folks who are kind of coming out of religion, to this realization that they were contributing to some of their own problems and not taking responsibility for things. How
Yeah.
has life been for you as like post red pilling, after you've come out of the rabbit hole? How has life been for you? Do you think it'd be better or worse, or everybody an asshole, or
It's way better. I'm able to actually interact with conspiracies without getting sucked back in. I've been reading Jim Fetzer's No One Died at Sandy Hook book to prepare for when we cover the topic on my upcoming podcast. And I gotta say, that's a big achievement for me to be able to read that, because there are things when I come across things that I can't quite understand, but I'm just like, I know these guys are lying. Everything they say is a lie. So, but then when I come across something that I can't quite account for, I put the PDF away and I go off and I do some searching, and I'm like, aha, okay, that was where they were coming up with this, and it's all nonsense. So yeah, but it's gotten to the point where I can kind of absorb knowledge easier and kind of better, and in a way I'm actually more open-minded. You would think, oh, well, conspiracy theorists, they have really, really open minds, but actually not really. And I'm able to deal with people in social settings a lot better, and I'm not coming off as Aspergery as I used to. I used to be pretty certain that I might have had Asperger's, and I'm not manifesting that as much as I used to. I mean, it's not the same for everyone, obviously. And, a lot of it has to do with my partner, who's been very supportive, very caring, very loving, and very fun to be around. And that's giving me a nice support base where I can kind of focus on, the inner therapy. So.
So one of
That's
the
great.
things you said that really touched me in the last interview I saw you give, I think it had to do with what you felt when you left. And if I got this right, correct me if I didn't. And this reminds me very much of people I've talked to on the helpline who've just decided that they don't believe anymore. That it was crushing. You felt like weeping and sobbing and dead inside.
Yeah, and that also that's exactly, and I heard the same thing from Jatarth Jadeja. He's a former QAnon follower, lives in Australia. He's been on CNN a bunch of times and he's spoken out. And he says when he realized that Q wasn't real, like he just went outside, he had a cigarette, and he felt that same feeling. When I heard him describing it, I was like, exactly what I felt, because I felt like the conspiracy theories like filled this hole inside of me. And then with them gone, I was like, oh God, I got to fill that hole up. Oh God, so much work to do.
Yeah, religious people say there's a God-shaped hole in your heart. So that was a conspiracy-shaped hole in your heart.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're and and if you're careful, you can fill it with your own version of spirituality or religion, but you got to be careful when you're coming out of conspiracies, or if you're coming out of religion. If you're coming out of religion, the conspiracies are going to be waiting there for you, and they're going to be so tempting. If you're coming out of conspiracies, religion is going to be there waiting for you, and it's going to be so tempting. It's very easy to,
Exactly.
so I just urge people to just use caution and care and try to avoid all that stuff for a little bit when you're exiting.
Now, a part of the poll, we had most of the people here have been in contact with friends or loved ones who are really entwined with conspiracy theories. And with that follow-up question, a lot of them had strained or even lost relationships because of it. How, what would you like? How could people work with this? Like, if I have someone that I know, which I do, who is deep into some of these conspiracy theories, what can I do either for myself or for them to work through it?
I kind of I suggested this on the first pod that I was interviewed by Skeptical Inquirer's Point of Inquiry. And I still back this up to this day. I think something like South Park, like sit down, watch some South Park, because South Park takes stabs at both sides equally.
Hmm.
And usually someone in a conspiracy theorist is either going to be extreme left or extreme right. And South Park is kind of like a middle ground. And your liberal friend will be laughing at the conservative joke, and the conservative friend will be laughing at the liberal joke. And they make fun of both equally. And I think something like that is a good point where, if it's a friend where you can sit down and watch TV with, I think that's something like that. And I also suggest like kind of like using their idea to help de-radicalize them, kind of like come at it from, look, we're not saying the government is good. We're not saying that no one's ever done bad things, and kind of try and bring their focus onto the real stuff. Like, let's talk about MK Ultra. Let's talk about COINTELPRO. Let's talk about the real things that help, even if you can't get them out of the conspiracies, let's kind of shift their focus onto the real ones. And then from there, they might be able to kind of slowly come out of it. And once they do, the biggest difference is when you're in the conspiracy, you see that it's some shadowy, faceless cabal, well, not faceless, but, people are in this shadowy cabal. And then when you come out of it, you realize that it's systemic. It's not a group of, powerful people necessarily, but it's more of a systemic thing, that there is no face or name to it. And, I think kind of trying to shift it from a shadowy cabal to having them understand it's systemic, just tiny little baby steps, maybe a little
Mhm.
South Park here, maybe Inside Job on Netflix, because that was a great show, and the jokes were just chef's kiss.
Hey, thank you for mentioning that. So I'm going to paste the review I did of it from AIPT, the same place that Stephanie writes.
So my favorite part was when they're trying to take down the robot president, and he pulls jet fuel out of his bag, and she goes, "Jet fuel? We know that's only good for melting steel beams."
Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Yes.
We have got a
you.
lot of questions. You opening to answering some of them?
Yeah.
All right. One of this was at the very beginning, and I didn't quite hear this answered, but did you get any comfort out of believing in conspiracy theories, or did you still feel like the world was still super confusing?
Yeah, I did get some comfort, and let's face it, how much more comforting is it to think that no one died at Sandy Hook than to deal with the fact that 28 people, including the shooter, 20 of them children, died that day? I would rather prefer that no one actually did die there. I would much prefer that it had been fake. There was definitely comfort.
Well, so there was a question that said, why are some people drawn into conspiracy theories? Talked a little bit about some of that, I guess.
I think it's just, some people do like to connect the dots. And I mean, I see it a lot in the true crime community too. I definitely, you do see a lot of, you saw it with the Gabby Petito case. A lot of people want to solve a mystery. They want to be that 1 in 1,000 or that 1 in a million. Civilian solves cold case that investigators, when you want to be the one to solve a problem, even if it's not a real problem, and even if it's not a real solution.
Well, someone also asked, do you have any idea what percentage of people believe conspiracy theories?
I'm not sure on the exact numbers, but I know it has gone up. I saw some recent polls, something about like Republicans who believe like Biden never won the election or something, and it was just an astoundingly high number. So, I mean, I don't have exact numbers on it. I know the Rasmussen polls tend to lean right when they do their polling. I'm not sure about the other polls, so I'm sorry I don't have the exact numbers.
And for sure, people who believe different conspiracy theories would believe in a different percents. But one thing I've read is like, if you believe one, you're much more likely than someone who doesn't believe any to believe many, right?
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
Yeah, and it, because it's kind of like it is kind of like a drug. I mean, some people will just stop at marijuana, and others will be like, I want to try mushrooms too.
There was just an episode of Skeptoid about the JFK assassination, and I don't remember the exact number, but it blew my mind that like something like, I want to say over 60%, 70% of Americans believe there was more than the official story.
Oh yeah, and we have Oliver Stone to thank for that. And
For
by
that,
the way,
yeah.
Oliver Stone's son is into QAnon.
Oh wow.
So that kind of tells you. And look, I loved Natural Born Killers, and even JFK was a good movie, but
I saw that
like
in the
when
theaters.
I was young and I watched it, like I came away from it thinking, wow, they finally solved JFK. No,
Yeah.
it was all conjecture.
Me too. It was a damn convincing story.
Because nobody wants to, because it's really hard to believe that a single man who was abusive to his wife took down the most beloved, young, handsome, charming, charismatic president ever. Nobody wants to believe that.
We got another question here. Have you heard of the Lyndon LaRouche movement or LaRoche movement?
It sounds familiar. Is that part of John Birch, or is that part of the Birch Society?
I don't
I'm thinking
know.
it, I'm thinking in my head it has something to do with John Birch. I'm trying
Let's see
to,
here.
I don't know that.
Lyndon LaRouche.
Well,
Okay.
I haven't heard
Oh,
of it.
socialist workers. I've heard of the name, but I haven't. I'm
Okay.
not. I will have to look into that.
We have another. What do you feel? What are your feelings about how fear plays into joining conspiracy theories or believing conspiracy theories?
Well, it's David Icke and Alex Jones like to talk about the Hegelian dialect, the problem, reaction, solution. Well, that's part of their business model too. Fear is a great, no one's going to buy Alex's, food buckets and health supplements unless they have enough fear, unless he convinces them that they have a reason to be fearful and they're going to need those food buckets and those supplements. So they're using that problem, reaction, solution. Fear is a very big part of it.
Got it.
So another question was, is there a high turnover among conspiracy theory believers, or is it a small cult, I'll say group, that's staying for life, subscribing like to the latest Q post?
I see how here's the weird thing, and this is anecdotal. I see a lot of posts about people on Twitter saying, this is day so and so of my sobriety from drugs or alcohol. You don't really see that in conspiracy theorists. Most people who used to believe in conspiracy theories kind of, and I don't blame them. I don't, but I think it's kind of our duty to speak up. It's kind of hard to tell how many how much in recovery are out there. So it's hard to tell, but it's easier to speak out and to tell someone I used to be a homeless heroin addict than it is to tell people that used to be conspiracy theorists. It's really hard to tell. And that's why I speak up, and that's why I encourage other people to speak out.
We've
How
got
much
time
of-
for 2 more questions.
To ask
Rob,
the
what were you
YouTube
gonna say?
one, the YouTube question. How about that
Great.
one? How much of a role do you think things like YouTube algorithms could contribute to the echo chambers, that suck people into these sorts of things?
Very, very huge. The autoplay feature, excuse me, and also there was a lot of elements of, oh, okay, you looked up this video about Joe Rogan. Well, maybe you'll like this video by Stefan Molyneux. And there is the algorithms are pretty bad, pretty dangerous.
Yeah, anecdotally, I have heard that many or most even, and this is from, I think it was Sargent himself, one of the leaders of the Flat Earth movement, that most of the people he greets into the movement came because they started watching some YouTube video about the JFK assassination. Could have happened. I mean, it's not paranormal. It's not beyond the realm. And then YouTube suggested, hey, how about this Flat Earth video? And then they got sucked into it and believe it.
Yeah. And I heard, I think it was on the QAnon Anonymous podcast, they did an experiment with a new laptop and a brand new YouTube account, and they selected a topic. 5 videos later, here's a Jordan Peterson video, so it doesn't take too much. I hope they've cleaned it up now, but who knows?
And the final question for this evening, what is your feeling on how the deep fake technologies that are coming into their own, how is that going to affect the conspiracy theory landscape. And do you
Oh, God.
explain what the deep fake is briefly as well?
Well, the deep fakes are just incredibly amazing, like CGI technology. And that if you wanted to make Zelensky say in a video that all Ukrainians are Nazis, you could do that with the technology that exists. And there's a double problem to that now. A video let's say a video emerges of Zelensky saying that, and it comes out that it was a deep fake. Damage has already been done to some people. But then you look at it from the other side. And you could see Marjorie Taylor Greene doing this. You have a video of her harassing David Hoagland from, I think David Hoag from Parkland shooting. Well, she can just come back and say, oh, well, that's a deep fake. So it can be used to radicalize people, and it can also be used as an excuse for people to disavow things that they've actually done.
I hadn't thought of that. Wow.
Yeah.
Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on here. Before we kind of wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or things that we didn't cover that you want to conclude with?
I just wanted to kind of give a plug for Prism Meta News, and I put the link in there. And we are we're working on a support system called Discussing Our Unusual Beliefs Together. So we're going to be doubters. And I'm also going to be recording the first episode of my podcast soon. We're going to be calling it True Crime Conspiracy. And it's going to be myself and retired FBI agent James Harris. And he's a former FBI agent interested in conspiracy theories, not as a believer, but, and I'm a former conspiracy theorist interested in true crime. So we're going to kind of discuss true crime cases that got involved, that somehow got, sucked into conspiracy theories, like Parkland and Aurora and Sandy Hook and Johnny Gosh. So we're going to be kind of exposing, experimenting, discussing a lot of these strange topics from a skeptical perspective.
Awesome. Again, thank you very much. Hey, we've got to hang out afterwards. Do you have a little time to stick around and hang out with? Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, great. And do you mind if I quickly bring someone on? I think she has a few thoughts that she wanted to share with.
Yeah, no, is it okay if I have a few puffs from my vape?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I've just been sitting there dying.
Real quick, I wanted to bring on Glenda Jordon. She's a former guest and a fantastic RfRx troll smasher. So Glenda, you had a few things to say about conspiracy theory mindset?
Yes, I did. First, Stephanie, what a profound talk. It was so good. The chat was on fire. People had a lot to say about it. There was an important question that was brought up at the beginning, and you shared a story that made me want to bring up this point. Was somebody was asking, how do I get someone out of conspiracy theory thinking? How do I get them out of QAnon? And it made me think of, there's the QAnon casualties it's a subreddit. It's our QAnon casualties. I highly recommend y'all check it out. It's a very, very good subreddit. It's pretty heavy. So just be aware of that when you're going in. There's a lot of family and friends lost.
Have tissues ready.
Have tissues ready. It was, you brought it up that you, as working with the obituaries, you having this skill and this knowledge of, well, I know how this works. I know that this is impossible for this to happen unless it's real. One of the top QAnon casualties on how did I get out of Q, he was a computer programmer, so he knew how computers work, and it was one of the conspiracies that was, this deals with this laptop, and this is this Hunter Biden or QAnon or whatever it is. But he
Anthony
knew,
Weiner.
Yeah, or whatever it was, but he knew that, like, even though he was in QAnon, he knew, but I know that that's not how that works with computer programming because I'm a computer programmer. That's literally impossible what they're describing because I do this every day for my job. I see this evidence. And
Yeah.
the important thing of if somebody's in there, maybe the street epistemology, if you don't know, please check out our videos about street epistemology, Anthony Magnabosco. It's on our YouTube channel. It's on Anthony Magnabosco's YouTube channel. Doing the street epistemology of somebody that we know that they're going to be open to somebody that they love and trust as a friend. So it needs to be coming from a family member, from a trusted coworker, somebody that they have a connection with, to plant the seed of doubt on something that that person probably knows a lot about, whether it's related to their career or their life experiences, to just start leaving those little, to use a Q term, the little breadcrumbs out into the real world on, these poking these holes in this balloon of chaos and conspiracy theory thinking. It was really amazing that you shared that was a fact that you knew that wasn't real because you've dealt with the obituaries. And we had, and I have found that there are some Q people and conspiracy theorists in general. Like I'm sure you found there are a lot of folks out there who, oh no, I believe people die from COVID, but I believe that it was all planned and it's all a hoax or whatever. I believe in the death.
Right.
We had that I live in Las Vegas, and when the 1 October shooting happened, we had a lot of people, it's like, okay, well, no, I believe that people died, but it was all planned by the government and blah, blah, blah. Like they'll acknowledge the deaths, but not the reality of the situation. Anyway, I just wanted to come in because that was
that was great because I was out of I was still into conspiracies when San Bernardino happened.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first heard of it right away, off the cuff, oh, false flag. Well, after I'd gotten out of the conspiracies a few years ago, an ex-boyfriend of mine, his family lives down near LA, and we went out to a restaurant near San Bernardino. And there were pictures of some of the victims on the wall. Some of the people who died in the shooting had been at this restaurant. And that was another detail that struck me like, that's way too detailed for anything to have been a conspiracy. That's one of those little details that the conspiracy theorists never see. Like, who would really, is there a government agency in charge of hanging up pictures at restaurants? No.
But that's a great point. Sometimes it's little things like that. I'm like, what the level of dedication. My favorite, one of the false flag things is that they're actors, right? We got that a lot with Las Vegas of these are these actors that they reuse. I work in the entertainment industry. And so first of all, casting calls and SAG-AFTRA and whatever, asking for actors. Do you really think that they would use the same actors for multiple events? Wouldn't they just use multiple, different actors if they were trying to make a conspiracy?
Conspiracy theorists believe simultaneously that the people in control of these things are brilliant and stupid.
Yes.
And that was one of Icke's 14 commonalities of fascism, was that the enemy is both all-powerful and stupid at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a really good question, and I wanted to bring that up. There's not a simple answer.
Great.
I know that there are a lot of folks who are still here attending that have relatives and loved ones in conspiracy theory thinking. It's ruined lives. I highly encourage everyone to check. There are Facebook groups, Reddit subreddits, private chats that are just like RFR. They're support communities for folks who have loved ones who are drowning in conspiracy theories, and it's heartbreaking.
And I'll tell you one thing that has not, and I saw a comment in the chat, one thing that has not changed since I got out of conspiracies is this. This goes over my webcam when it is not in use. I put a little piece of medical tape over it, and that still hasn't changed.
That's that. Yeah. I got a little slidey That's first of all, that's
that
not a conspiracy. Everyone needs to have that, just so you know. Get a little cover for
yeah.
your webcam.
Actually,
For
they
those-
interviewed,
and
it was the head of the NSA or CIA, I forget which. He said, "Oh yes, everyone should do that." He said that.
Yeah, if you
yeah,
and actually,
yeah,
it's funny if you. I think there's been some press photos of some high up tech person, and they've got the cover on their webcams. Like that tells you all you need to know. Like,
yeah.
you-
Zuckerberg
yeah,
had, you
they're
could
super
see
easy.
his taped over. Yeah. So, you can't, a little bit of paranoia about the government. I do encourage
But that
that.
doesn't
I
need to be
do
the
encourage
government. That could
that.
be any hacker. Because like there
Yeah.
was like there's hackbusters, and it's amazing what they can do and get it. They show you what they can do and get into
Oh, I know,
hackers'
Rob.
computers.
There's an
Yeah,
entire
right.
convention
Yeah.
in Las Vegas, and this is some little Las Vegas knowledge.
Oh
There's a
yeah,
convention in
yeah.
Las Vegas where the lanyards for the attendees are covered with these grid lights. It has all these different lights. And throughout the conference, it's a game among the attendees to see how many lights they can get turned on somebody else's remote lanyard. We get briefings. I mean, I was just an independent contractor. We get briefings like, make sure you turn off your Wi-Fi and you turn off your Bluetooth for this weekend because your phone, and they'll pull it up in the conference of like, look, we just hacked this person's phone. There's their bank account. There's their social media things. Turn on two-factor authentication on all, but that's not necessarily a conspiracy. That's just like a healthy dose of protecting your stuff. Like you are not as safe on the
Yeah.
internet and online as you think you are, which
Yeah,
is
don't be a Jeffrey
Yeah.
Toobin. Don't be a Jeffrey Toobin.
Anyway, Stephanie, I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me
Yeah,
rant
no,
a little
thank
bit. That
you.
was just
Thank
an important
you.
question.
Thank you,
Your talk
Glenda.
was-
And while you were talking, I pasted a link to my friend Mick West's book, Escaping the Rabbit Hole, which is subtitled A Guide to Helping Friends, Family, and Loved Ones. So that's what that book is about.
Perfect. Thanks
And-
so much. Amazing talk, Stephanie. We really appreciate you coming
Thank
out.
you. And I also recommend the documentary, The Brainwashing of My, I think it's either called The Brainwashing of My Father or The Brainwashing of My Dad. And you're going to cry at the end. It's a happy ending, but it's a very sweet, to watch this guy go from a sweet, frail old man to a bitter, angry racist back to a sweet, frail old man is just amazing.
Oh, I'm getting teary just thinking about that. I
Wow.
love character arcs and stuff like that, but when it's a real person who makes that change, it just anyways. Stephanie, thank you so much. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this up with some final words, and we'll hear from our executive director, Gayle Jordon, in a little bit. So, folks, that is going to wrap up this discussion for RfRx, but we're not quite done with the show yet. I want to tell you that we've got another one of these coming up next week.
We do.
And folks, we sure do. You have seen this guest several times. In fact, he was the very first RfRx guest way back in April of 2020. Yes, folks, it is Dr. Del Rey, and he is coming on to talk to us about the myth of sex addiction. The idea of sex addiction is a religious notion at its very roots. Since 1983, religions have used the idea of sex addiction as a tool of purity culture. In this discussion, Dr. Del Rey joins us once again to talk about the roots of the concept of sex addiction and how it affects you and our entire culture. This doesn't mean that people don't have concerns and problems with their sexual behavior, but we need to treat the real issues and not imaginary problems based in religious ideology. So that's coming up next week, folks. Same bat time, same bat channel. What else, Rob?
Wow, I can't wait till that one is uploaded because that comes up surprisingly often from callers. And questions, comments, inquiries can be sent via email about this or any other video to rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And we have a fantastic blog that is at medium.com. Eric put the link in there. And as was mentioned before, we have a fantastic podcast. Earlier episodes are a standard kind of podcast with hosts talking about things. And the ones for the last couple of years are the audio versions of these RfRx talks.
Yeah, and folks, some of you guys have donated, some of you guys have volunteered. There is another way to help recovering from religion out. Even if you're doing those two things or you can't do those two things, Follow us on social media, interact with us on social media, because that really, really helps too. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we are on even TikTok, for crying out loud. I've got all those links here in the chat, and they're going to be in the description of the YouTube video as well. And finally, Gus,
I am one of the TikToks, and I wish I could redo it because I was the first one. Everyone else is better than mine.
You're the guinea pig, Rob.
Yes. So you can sign up for our newsletter, and this provides RFR news, recently added RfRx resources, recently published videos, any resources we've added RFR, and also recently published blog posts.
Folks, before we head out for this evening, I want to hear from our executive director. I am so excited, and please give a great round of applause for our one and only executive director, Gayle Jordon.
Nothing better than silent Zoom applause. It's the highlight.
I
of
can
my
hear
day.
them. Oh my gosh. I can barely hear you over there, deafening applause.
Thank you, everyone. Mostly thank you for coming and attending. Stephanie, wow. I really had not heard anything like this. This is a fascinating subject. You know, sometimes people ask us, what would this have to do with recovering from religion? And I find that we've consistently had guest speakers who talk about being vulnerable to bad ideas. We're human beings, and the way our brain synapse works. And Rob spent a lot of time trying to help us understand what's happening in our brain when we're doing this. And this is, you know, as I heard you talk, and I thought about you as a younger person being susceptible to this and leaning into this. And I think we've all got to be on our guard about that. Those of us who think that we have it all figured out, to spend time thinking, now, wait a minute, is this something that I'm programmed to believe? Is this something that's happening in my brain? Or do I have sustainable evidence? Do I have good facts that back this up? It's a wonderful thing to do. But I so appreciate your presentation. I appreciate the personal and the vulnerable that you presented in order to get us to understand what that's like. And so I'm so grateful to you for that. Eric and Rob, fabulous co-hosts as usual. You do just a great job with that. Nikki, thank you for doing your usual job. Everybody pay attention to the clock on Nikki's square, because that's what time of the morning it is for her.
Oh.
And Glenda and Sasha, thank you for your troll stomping. Helen, didn't even have any, but that's okay. You were here, and maybe that's what they've heard about. They know y'all are going to be here, and so the trolls have decided to leave us alone. Please join us from week to week. I know that some people watch this on YouTube, and that's awesome. And I know that you get a lot out of it. But when you come to the live meeting, you get the little bonus of participating in the chat. And boy, was there a lot of activity in there tonight. So anytime you can join us live, we would love that. If you can't, listen on YouTube, listen to our podcasts. And as Eric has already mentioned, any kind of interaction with our social media, you may have someone in your circle that one little like or one little retweet or one little share might touch, and they can find the help that Recovering from Religion offers, whether that's the 24-hour telephone hotline, the 24-hour internet chat, our support group meetings, our online community, a link to the Secular Therapy Project, whatever it is. Thank you for helping us put the word out. That's the thing that's the biggest challenge for us, is getting folks to know who we are and how we can be found. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the hangout. Stephanie, thank you again for being our special guest, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much.